It's probably the most unique Bond film ever made because, again, bringing the thematic element to the artistry of the film and the filmmaking that links with the characters. And, one of the main themes of the film is resurrection. And then also this idea that it's an old, like Bond stuck in a young man's game. He's getting a little too old. And so a lot of the shots and a lot of the set design and a lot of the character actions and dialogue, it's all tied together to these same themes and motifs.
This is yet another example of the impact that The Dark Knight had on cinema, where before The Dark Knight, there was action blockbuster movies, there's a pre-Dark Knight and a post-Dark Knight, I believe. There's like a cinema change in terms of big budget filmmaking with that film, and other filmmakers took note of what Nolan did with that film to bring the artistry, to bring real cinema into these epic scale, large productions. Just because it has a $200 million budget doesn't mean it doesn't have to be a fantastic piece of cinema. You know what I mean? And then that influence of that film didn't just stretch to comic book movies. It stretched throughout all of big budget filmmaking, large scale filmmaking. And then this film, it's Quantum of Solace kind of drew from it a little bit, but I think this film, especially in terms of how it was shot, how the story unfolds, and the villain as well, because Silva, played by Javier Bardem, he has a very similar plot as the Joker in The Dark Knight, where he plans to get himself captured. He dresses up as a police officer to try and kill a member of government. There's a lot of thematic elements that they drew from The Dark Knight, and so I think that this movie is a testament to the impact that The Dark Knight had on cinema. Hey, you, aspiring filmmakers and screenwriters. Raiders of the Lost podcast has paired up with Writer Duet, the new standard for screenwriting software. Head on over to writerduet.com/Raiders to subscribe to a 30-day free trial of any one of Writer Duet's subscription services. We know many of you listening are aspiring screenwriters and filmmakers. If you know anything about screenwriting, you know that the formatting is very strange and complicated and just straight weird. If your script isn't up to snuff in terms of the formatting standard, it's going to get thrown in the trash. Writer Duet makes the process streamlined and easy with the cloud-based access from any device, anywhere. Famous users have also been using Writer Duet, including Jim Uhls, who wrote Fight Club, Christopher Ford, who wrote Spider-Man Homecoming. It's free to sign up with Writer Duet using our special promo. All you have to do is go to writerduet.com/Raiders. Again, writerduet.com/Raiders to sign up for a special 30-day free trial of any one of their subscriptions.
Absolutely. I mean, also to keep going, the hero loses everything at one point in the film. Both villains are seriously deformed from violence and pain in their past, and it's used as a motivation for revenge and creating chaos. And also, they're both kind of always one step ahead and highly intelligent and have these master plans kind of worked out where everyone else is trying to play catch up. But also, I think that, again, this is the most unique James Bond movie because you're right, it's very similar to Dark Knight, but also we see a new vulnerability in the character that we've never seen before. I mean, this entire film is about James Bond loses a step. James Bond should face retirement. James Bond technically dies and could follow that life of living off being a dead man. And I mean, James Bond physically isn't there. He fails all of his tests. He fails his psychological exams. And it's really about him. He has to either accept the past and accept his life, that his career is almost over, or he has to kind of face all that. And like he says in the film, and again, one of the main themes of the movie is resurrection, and resurrect and reinvent himself, which he can only do through death.
And the other major theme, which you mentioned earlier of this film, it's the old ways versus the new ways. And you'll see multiple times the characters literally say, sometimes the old ways are the best, or the new way is the way to be. Because it's this conflict between James, like you said, he's older now. It's a version of Bond we haven't seen where he's weathered, he's worn out. Like you said, he's lost a step, and it brought a great amount of vulnerability. And there's a lot of really great visual and storyline motifs that depict this theme for James. My favorite one is that meeting with Q when they meet in the art museum, and they're both looking at that painting of an old warship being brought back to shore, and Q points out that it's sad to see this old warship being pulled in because it translates the inevitability of time. And this is literally, I think, a representation of Bond's character, where he is that old warship that's being pulled back to shore because his time's done. And so that's what his character's going through in this film. And there are several other moments where they address the old ways, and how James doesn't quite fit in with the new world, or he's struggling to. And this list is he fails his first mission. I mean, he gets shot by the bad guy before Naomi Harris, Moneypenny shoots him. He gets shot by the bad guy, which never happens. He essentially fails that mission because he gets on the train and he isn't able to stop the guy. MI6 wants Bond out because he's aging and weathered and he's failing his exams. M is also being forced to retire, so she's also part of the old ways, which is being pushed out by the new ways. So M and Bond have a lot in common in this film. He uses the straight edge razor to shave his face. The painting of the ship, he drives the old Aston Martin from the early films. And then for the tech in this movie, all he gets is a gun and then a little radio, which is very simple and kind of harkens back to the old films. And then at the end of the film, he kills Silva with a knife, not with a gun or any piece of tech, but just with the oldest weapon there is, a knife.
And also, he uses the guns, the headlight guns on that Aston Martin, which is the original tech of those old James Bond films. And I love how you brought up M, because there's this bond between M and Bond. It's almost like a familial relationship. It's kind of like mother and son in a way. And this relationship, although it's extended for 22 films before this, it's so great to see it visited in such a personal and intense way, because this is the seventh time that Judi Dench appeared as M in her last time. Spoilers alert. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, she was in a couple of the Brosnan movies.
But it's great to see it because she's such an integral figure in Bond's life, fictionally, obviously, and she's so important to him, whether they want to admit it or not. And she's really the only authority that he respects, besides obviously the palace and the Queen. And you're right, they're very similar in this film, because both M and Bond, they both have lost a step. You know, that's one of the reasons why Mallory, played by Ralph Fiennes, he's coming in, because just like Bond lost a step in that opening mission and gets shot and then eventually gets killed, M misses a step. She's the one that lost the hard drive to begin with. She's the one that let the hard drive get out into the open. And they both stubbornly refuse to accept that it's almost the end of the line. And they were once this unstoppable team, like they could get anything accomplished, but they won't accept that it's almost time to end their careers. And also, they're kind of being coaxed by this mystery villain and back into the game in a way to kind of to look at their past and look on their sins. M also has to struggle with the fact that she's the one that had the trigger pulled on James. So she has to deal with the fact that James Bond is dead because of her, even though he's an expendable agent. And then James has to come to accept in his afterlife in a way that he has to understand that he was an expendable agent and it's nothing personal. And that's one of the reasons why he comes back to M once MI6 is blown up by Silva, because he does care about her and he understands her decisions are still meant for the greater good.
I think the most interesting character development for Bond is when he fakes his death, because after Moneypenny shoots him, it sets him up for the ability to, once he's presumed dead, to just stay dead.
And he kind of does that with Casino Royale with the relationship with Ava Green's character.
I think it's more of a vacation.
Yeah, that's like a honeymoon in a way. But he still is running from his job. Yeah. But I mean, this is different.
But it's not just running from his job. He's also been running from his past, and we finally see this new facet to the character. Like you mentioned, this is the most vulnerable he's ever been. But this film works so well. It's not just because it's a great spy action movie, but because we finally have a personal storyline arc for Bond, deeply personal, where his past is brought to light, and we learned that he had a troubled upbringing, and he dealt with great turmoil as a boy, and that has affected him as an adult. He had serious trauma when he grew up, and the reason why he escaped to Turkey and was living as a presumed dead person, because he was escaping his past and he didn't want to deal with his past. And so it was this character who goes through this major transformation in this film, because in the first act of the film, he abandons himself because he doesn't want to deal with what his past has been. He just shuts off and starts over somewhere else. And then by the end of the film, he finally, through the help of M and his experience of battling with Silva, he grows to understand that he has to accept his past, deal with it, and then move on.